because I think if you learn about a religion only through the people in your own religion, I don't think you're really finding facts at all.
I'm sorry, but the attention span of most teenagers these days is 3 to 5 seconds. That's how long they stay on one TikTok.
Yeah.
How are you gonna
Yeah.
learn anything off a 3 to 5 second exposure?
Welcome everybody to another edition of Three Dad Bods with the two sexiest bods for your viewing and listening pleasure.
Yeah, hopefully you're not getting sick of us. We're missing the most sarcastic dad bod though, because he's one of these days we'll find out what's going on with him. He's kind of disappeared. I haven't heard from him in a while. So Sean, if you're listening, text us back, will you? You're the worst texter in the face of on the planet, man. Just terrible. I mean,
Getting called out on a podcast.
we have to literally pretend you died to get you to respond, and then not a word since. So, right,
Yeah.
right, Brent?
Yeah. Now you know why I felt that way. You
Yeah.
know why I was so heartbroken. My Sean shrine was put up. I mean,
even though we got some crap from Jen Rumsey and a couple others, one guy, Brian Squires, shout out to you. You responded to me. He was concerned, but he says, you know what, this is part of the course with Sean. He just doesn't respond to any type of texting, voicemails. So I don't know how they even get hold of him at work.
I don't think he does work.
I thought we were his best friends. I guess not.
We're-
So I'll have to go
Imagine
through
how he
Alan.
treats his enemies.
Exactly. Well, how was your week, man?
Good.
Mhm.
Been fighting off a little bug. The wife and I went down and took a trip down to Savannah, Georgia. Had a great time.
Yeah.
Temperature
Yeah,
in the
same.
70s, and listener, if you have an opportunity to go and visit Savannah, Georgia, I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic, fun place to go to. Very chill, very laid back. Highly recommend it.
So what year is this for you two now? How many years?
35. Yeah, we went out on our first date.
35.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
35 years. Positive. 1989. Do the math.
That's really.
Yeah.
Oh, is it 35?
We went out
years?
on our first date in 1989, February 11th, 1989. And may have brought this up on a past episode, but we went out to see the movie Twins in the movie theater.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were married in 1990 or 91?
No, we were married in 97. Got married 8 years later.
Oh, so 97. Oh, so it's 35 years that you've known each other. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was asking how many years you were married. So
Oh, no, our
I was
anniversary
like
is
35.
No,
Yeah.
no, our anniversary is in April. No, this is our dating anniversary.
Oh, okay. Oh, how romantic.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. And just any excuse to go on a vacation is always good, right?
I know.
So
Yeah, anytime. Anytime.
what was the best meal you had down in Savannah?
I ate nothing but seafood. I want to
Did
tell
you?
you. I had, let's see. First night we stayed in Atlanta, and because Valentine's Day was the first day of Lent,
Mhm.
that's a Catholic tradition. That's a no meat day.
Oh,
It's a high holiday. It's Ash Wednesday is what it is. And we actually shared a pad thai with lobster.
that sounds
It
good.
was absolutely incredible. It was amazing. And then Thursday we made it into Savannah, and I started off lunch down there with some oysters Rockefeller.
Ooh,
And we had a
that
nice
sounds
little
good.
cheese platter. And then that night, I'm trying to think.
A little oyster action that night, huh? I like it,
yeah.
Brent. Yeah.
That night we actually ate barbecue. They have a riverfront area. Savannah is very old, historic, a lot of old homes from early 1800s. The streets are cobblestone.
Yeah,
And
that'd
then
be
the
awesome.
city itself, like downtown, probably has like 15 parks. It's absolutely beautiful, as the way it's laid out and stuff. And so the area up along the riverside, they have a whole bunch of restaurants. We went to a dueling piano bar
No, that'd be fun.
that night. Yeah, so yeah, that was actually the only night I didn't have seafood. I had a barbecue sandwich that night, and then
Mm.
the next day I had more oysters Rockefeller and
You know what?
lobster.
You know what I like
So good.
most about the Carolinas and Georgia, that area. I was in
Mhm.
Charleston for
Yeah,
about 3 or 4 days.
and Savannah and Charleston are very similar to
Very
each other.
close, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the history there. I mean,
Mhm.
the Revolution and the Civil War. The homes are cool. Especially on when you're on the coast on the little
Right.
islands. So,
So
yeah, I need to get out to Savannah. That was one of the ones I wanted. I was so close. I was thinking, yeah, just run down to Savannah for a day, but I want to go down there and spend a week or so.
So one thing that we found out about Savannah, if you're ever into St. Patrick's Day,
Hmm.
Savannah has the longest running St. Patrick's Day parade.
Oh, really?
This year marks
Hmm.
their 200th St. Patty's Day parade.
There's a lot of
200.
Irish in Georgia. I didn't know that.
I have
Jeez.
no idea, but that's something they take a lot of. It was all over the news. They're getting ready for it.
Huh.
I mean, 200 years of straight parades. That's pretty cool, man.
That is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So,
Yeah.
well, I start my new job on the 26th. So,
Yay.
yeah, it's got a little history associated with it. I'm going to be selling rare coin collections, and there's a lot of history behind rare coins. And so, going to learn all about it in the next few days. I get my orientation material tomorrow or Thursday, and we'll be ready to go and
That's
actually
good,
get paid
man.
a decent amount finally.
Yeah,
So,
you're gonna knock it out, buddy. You're gonna
yeah,
hit a home run with that.
yeah, I'm a little happier now. So, well, what's funny? I was reading an article and and I was, it was talking about politics. It was talking about
Mhm.
how young kids are, especially women, have tending to, especially here in the United States and Great Britain, are going socially left in a bigger way. And men are kind of staying at the same age, the same. They're still a little left of center, but they're staying the same. And I mean, even with our generation, we tended to be a little more liberal or progressive when we were younger. And then as we got older, we became more conservative. And so, but I was thinking, and we were talking about this before this episode, but we were talking a little bit about religion and what kind of changes we've had in our lives. And so, and you have a real unique story, and we've talked about that before in another episode. And so do I, in a lot of ways too.
Yeah.
Because of some of the things we've gone through. And so we were getting a little, I mean, right before the podcast started, we were kind of go over a few of the things we are going to talk about. And we were kind of getting an interesting discussion right there. And I threw out the idea that sometimes religion and politics are inverse of each other as we get older. At least my experience is when I got older, I started out, growing up in the LDS church, going to church every Sunday, fairly indoctrinated, even though my dad was a little more progressive Mormon. Went on a mission, came home. I mean, I knew the ABCs of Mormonism inside and out, got married in the temple. But then, over time, I started becoming a little less orthodox, you could say, and eventually did some of my own research, which may have been accurate or may not have been. I mean, it was on the internet, and then I actually read books though, unlike most people these days. But uh, I studied myself kind of out of it for a bit, and then became super progressive in terms of religion, and then came back, kind of a redemption. So, anyway, kind of go over how you felt growing up, Brent.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Um, 14-year-old Karl,
Hmm.
goofy, skinny, dorky, pasty kid who
Still
loved the
pasty.
Celtics and his kittens,
I love the
smell
kittens.
like dry milk and stuff. But um, if you had a question about Judaism,
Mhm.
where would you have gone?
At that time?
Yeah.
Probably to
14-year-old
my
Karl.
dad, because he was a world history major. So,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
to my dad. Yep.
All right. But somebody within your religion, though, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, he obviously was yeah, he exactly.
If you had a question about something doesn't seem right about this golden plate story,
Mm.
where would you at 14 years old go to?
Oh, I wouldn't have gone anywhere. It was like snow is cold.
It,
I mean, it's just reality.
right, right. And so, I think the point I'm kind of getting to is as both you and I were younger and we grew up in the same church. And, you as a child, you attend these classes while your parents, of course, attend much more boring adult
Oh, yeah.
classes.
Oh, yeah.
But, the message itself, and look, listener and Karl, I'm not singling out one religion, because I believe that all religions are like this to a
No,
point.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, I do know that there is a point in the Catholic Church when you are about to go through your first communion. I know that they encourage you to go and visit other churches. I do know that. Um, excuse me, confirmation.
Mhm.
Um, now, with that said, as we were being prepared to be baptized at the age of 8, or even to receive the priesthood at the age of 12,
Mhm.
were we ever encouraged to visit other religions?
Um, I mean, it no one said it would hurt you to go visit another religion. I mean, your parents might not like it, but, I
Never,
was
ever
I
encouraged.
was never discouraged by it. Well, I actually talked to one Sunday school teacher, Gary Evans. I asked him about that, and he said, "Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to see another church or how other people worship, but of course, you're gonna have it dripped on
Is
by
that
your
the
parents."
mainline stance that was of the church
No,
at that
not
time?
not technically. Okay, now on my mission, when we were in the MTC, we were
Mhm.
encouraged to go to other churches and sometimes even preach at those churches. So it was I think, though, you're more indoctrinated in the faith after going through the MTC, Mission Training Center, than, some 14-year-old that's, "Oh, well, I'm gonna go to this other church and see how they do it." I mean, it's
Right.
yeah.
So the point that I'm getting at is that when you and I were at that age compared to a 14 or 15-year-old today,
Mhm.
the information in asking those questions is so much more readily available than it ever was to us.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think there was always, at least for my sake, I always felt like there was a stigma of fear of traveling outside those quote unquote safe walls inside your church because of improper thoughts or something you may have. As I became older,
Mhm.
that kind of became a driving force for where I am now as I began to question why was it bad to question, you know, to
Mhm.
find out information, find out about other people, to find out about other things. Because I think if you learn about a religion only through the people in your own religion, I don't think you're really finding facts at all. And I tell people this all the time, especially out here in the South. If you want to know something about a Mormon, ask me. I'll tell you about one. I have nothing bad to say. I'll tell you because the ideas and the interpretations of someone's beliefs being told through a church you're affiliated with are not going to be accurate. They're not at all.
I think, though, when it comes to someone that's really young, I don't think it hurts to have one exposure in the beginning. I think it's too confusing to have multiple exposures because then you tend to not know what to believe. Um, and I think when you're older, like when you were exploring at an older age after being married and having a little experience under your belt, I mean, it meant a lot more to you too when you did your research and when you made your decision to move on from the LDS church. Whereas, young kids, religion in a sense, be it Mormon, be it Catholic, it's kind of a construct or a framework to live their lives, at least when they're young. Um, and most religions believe in morality or abstinence from some of the things that will mess up youth. And some of these young people make some pretty bad decisions, even with religion. I mean, how many bad decisions did you make and got
No,
lucky? Yeah.
I've never made a bad decision in my life.
Yeah, right. I know. I grew up in the same neighborhood, pal.
But but
I heard the
what you're
stories.
talking about is a belief that you yourself have, and I share that same belief. I
Sure.
feel that people should be open to listening and to learning from other people, and whether you agree with it or whether you don't, that's your decision. However,
Yeah, but we're talking
that
about
stance is not the mainline stance of
right.
most
But
churches. They don't encourage that.
well, I mean, even with the LDS church, one of the things that age of accountability is eight. Who
Yeah,
decided that? I mean, how many 8-year-olds? I mean, I heard on the news a 9-year-old killed someone in his family and down in southern Utah somewhere. And are they going to prosecute the kid? Was the question on KSL this evening. I'm like, prosecute a 9-year-old? I mean, as an adult, you can't prosecute a 9-year-old. Now, when are we in terms of our brains, in terms of our thought process, when are we at a stage where we can make those decisions? Because where these kids are going to get a lot of that information you're talking about isn't going to be the local rabbi. It's going to be the internet,
right.
and it's going to be
100%
TikTok.
agree.
It's going to be Instagram.
Right.
It's going to be YouTube. And a lot of that stuff, just because it's on the internet doesn't make it true.
Garbage. No,
A
I
lot of it's
agree
garbage.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree 100%. And I think I've shared multiple times where when I went through my change of religions,
sure.
I was very cautious what I read on the internet because I knew there was so much junk out there. And the reality is most of my decision came from reading actual church books or past church books.
Okay.
So it wasn't look, if you want to find hate towards any person, any race, any ethnicity, any sexual orientation, whatever, you could find that very easily on the internet. That is
Oh,
not a
sure.
hard thing to do. But like you said, 99% of everything that you see on the internet is some person's opinion.
Opinion,
Yeah,
just like we are
absolutely.
tonight. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, so I I I think one of the things, you kind of brought up, what's the age of accountability? I and you tell me if I'm wrong, but is the age of accountability different today than it was 40 years ago? Or is it different than it was 100 years ago or 150 years ago?
I don't know, man. Life was a little more simple back when we grew up and before our time too. I think there's so much information being pushed on these kids. I think it kind of stunts actually their growth in terms of who they are
Yes.
because it's like you're at a buffet. You've got 1,000 choices. What are you going to eat? What's your favorite? You have no clue. You don't even know how to sort through all the information that's coming through you. There's very few people that teach these people, these kids, how to decide, well, what's correct? What's BS? What's bullshit on the internet? And what's true? How do I how do I determine truth? How do I know if that guy isn't telling me a story where this particular piece of information is semi-true, but
Right.
it's not all the way true? There's other opinions too. And so a lot of it comes down to and I'm sorry, but the attention span of most teenagers these days is 3 to 5 seconds. That's how long they stay on one TikTok.
Yeah.
How are you gonna
Yeah.
learn anything off a 3 to 5 second exposure to something that says, "Oh, Mormons are this, or Catholics are this, or and then and their beliefs and sometimes their philosophies can be determined and manipulated by the media. And that's, to me, a big issue, right? And it's going to be a bigger problem in the future.
And that's why I started off saying the best way to find out about something is to ask somebody who is actively involved. If you want to find out about, about homosexuality, talk to a homosexual, ask questions. I think they'd be more than willing to talk to a person, especially knowing that you want to learn more about them. If you want to find out about being Southern Baptist, talk to a Southern Baptist. Because the information you're going to gain is personal insight knowledge, which is going to be the best.
I think as a parent, now we're kind of past that stage where we have to worry about what our kids are bringing into their minds, because they're adults now. They can do what they want. And I completely am okay with that, because at this point I felt like I gave them a good enough background to determine those things on their own. But I think you do make a valid point, though. When we were younger, it would have been helpful if parents would have been encouraged by church leaders, like LDS leaders, to say, hey, you know what? We do feel like, we've got the best flavor in the Baskin Robbins store. However, it would be nice for you to give some exposure to your children of some of the other churches. It wouldn't hurt yourself either. Because then you can contrast and look at the different points of why we're LDS and why we're not Baptist or not in Judaism or Islam. And it would give them kind of more of a background. Then they don't get hammered when they're a little older, when they're in college, and all of a sudden their roommate says, yeah, you Mormons are a cult. And why is that? Well, I saw all this information here. Let me show you. And then they get the full court press from the anti-Mormon side or anti-Catholic side. I think you're right. I think parents shouldn't be so afraid of alternative ideas, because then they can control how it's disseminated to their children instead of having a teacher or a classmate dictate that to them.
I'm going to counteract that, though, here.
That's fine.
Because I wanted us to go back to when we were 12, 13, 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we could both agree the sentiment inside of religion was follow, don't question. Okay.
Well, when we were younger, yeah. Even more than
that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. And so if you look at religious numbers back at that time, okay,
mm-hmm.
the Mormon church's numbers were rising. The Catholic church's numbers were rising. Religion inside itself was rising, because it wasn't just the Mormons, it's everybody else. Don't question,
mm-hmm.
just follow. Don't question,
right.
just follow. As the information age began to prosper, what happened to numbers in religion?
They've become flatlined or static. Some of them have gone down.
I think every church today, I think the religions are
Islam hasn't. It's building.
Okay, so let me ask you then, the average Middle Easterner
mm-hmm.
or Islamic person, do they have internet?
Yeah, a lot of them do now. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a misnomer to think that just because they live in India or they live in Iran that they don't have internet. They do.
But what happens inside of that religion if you question your faith? What happens?
It's not good. It's not good.
No, it is not.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Okay. I like this. Have you ever heard of Amish? The Amish? Do you know much about them?
No, I've never heard of them.
Okay. Well, when I was out in Pennsylvania, shut up. When I was out in Pennsylvania on my mission,
Brother Karl, please tell me about the Amish.
We stopped by Blue Balls and
I've just churned my butter while I listen to you, Brother Karsten.
Intercourse in Pennsylvania. Those are actually
intercourse.
Towns. Yes, intercourse.
Oh my goodness! Now we're getting spicy.
Little Dutch boys flipping us off because we were taking pictures of them, which was probably rude.
My.
Anyway, bottom line.
By the way, And because we don't have any Amish listeners, I'm pretty sure of, they
Well,
have the
no.
worst BO.
Will you
Anyway,
let me
sorry.
finish my statement? Okay.
All right, sorry.
They do
Continue on,
something.
but kissing.
Will you stop? Okay, when they turn a certain age, they are actually encouraged. Stop it. They're actually encouraged to go and experience life outside their community.
Right.
And I can't
Have an
remember the
orgy.
term. No, they don't go orgy, but they do party and they do a lot of the things normal American kids do for a year or two. But
Right. Amish
if they
gone wild.
decide not to come back and live the Amish lifestyle, I mean,
No butter for you.
they're exercised from the entire family.
Yeah.
They're not welcome back. Now that's a little extreme, but well, not just a little, it's immensely extreme. So I guess the question is, you know, you could look at that and say, well, hey, well, they let those kids determine at a certain point what kind of, if they want to stay in the faith or not. But I mean, is the stigma that bad if you leave the LDS church or if you leave the Catholic church? I mean, in your case, I mean,
Been
did
pretty
your
good for me.
family, I was going to say, is your family stay close to you?
Yes. Well, the major I've had some not as close, but
Right.
there is that stigma. Um, the people that know you and truly love you know you
Right.
no matter what you do.
Your
But
mom would never
it's
throw you out this
it's
window.
a but it is incredibly scary, and
Sure.
especially with that fear that's been put inside you ever since you were first 3 years old in those little Sunday school classes singing, "I am a child of God," and stuff. The fear of questioning, and then really the fear of, "Is this really what I truly believe?" is overwhelming.
Well,
And
go ahead.
and
Sorry.
and and when in my case, it was more of just a religious stance, but, there's more and more people that are facing this issue when it comes to sexuality.
Hmm.
Um, and, the
Sure.
the
It's a big deal.
fear of, being a homosexual inside of a religion, and, the stigma that that puts inside of you and having a belief inside of you, but at the same time,
Hmm.
you gotta kind of weigh,
Yeah,
what you
it'd be
believe
really
and what
difficult.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, you and I just have to swing a different direction. But I mean, it would be extremely difficult being in that kind of a place where you have sexual desires for another male and your church is telling you, dude, all the things that you get to enjoy at the top levels of the LDS church, we're
Not you.
sorry, you don't get to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I mean, I know I've heard of there's plenty of you can watch interviews with some of these individuals on YouTube, but there are gay members of the LDS church who just don't sexually entertain their desires, which would be difficult. But they follow the church standards and some of them even have families. So is that I mean, you can argue, is that really fair to them or their spouse? Because I mean,
And I
if
don't
your
think that's
wife
a
never,
question you and I can answer,
yeah,
because
it's really an
we just don't
individual
know.
answer, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because first off, my my answer would be no, but that's based off of me and my beliefs. Look, if I have this type of belief and orientation, it's honestly not going to matter what you say or what you think or whatnot, because I'm always going to go with what feels comfortable for myself, where my
Hmm.
beliefs are. So I would find another church, but that's easy for someone to say who's not in those shoes. So just put it that
Right.
way.
Right. I mean, it's a big deal right now in the LDS church. This whole issue of LGBTQ and how accepting the church needs to be of that kind of lifestyle. I mean, the big question is, will the LDS church, and I think the Catholic Church is dealing with this too right now,
Yes, they are.
will they recognize gay marriage? Will LDS policy or doctrine allow sealings for gay couples? And I don't know. You know, one time I would have never believed that it would be possible at all that the LDS Church would go that direction. But recent hirings on a new PR director, just kind of their
I
public
personally think it's
PR.
wrong.
What's that?
I myself personally think it's wrong. I I
I'd have a hard time with
and
it.
look,
Yeah.
this is the religious beliefs according to Brent. Okay,
Mhm.
um, I believe that the term marriage should be between a man and a woman.
Right.
Now, I I understand and I fully agree with same-sex couples being able to have, um, wow, what's another term for it? A
A
joint,
domestic
a
partnership.
union,
Yeah.
a union, okay?
Yeah.
For insurance benefits, for,
Sure.
to be together. I have nothing against that. But to me, the word marriage is between a man and a woman. And I think that there should be openness towards, all right, maybe even when, if you get married again, Karl,
Mhm.
instead of having and still call it a wedding, but it wouldn't be a marriage. It would be a union. And then inside of your own church, you have the marriage between the
Mhm.
man and the woman. See what I'm saying? So everybody has a union which joins you together as husband, wife and wife, husband and wife. That then it gives you the government
Well,
right
government shouldn't even be in
of
the
yeah, but you have to have, when I say that, you have to have something, laws, rules,
yeah,
justification for
well, okay.
insurance reasons of, you just can't throw somebody
Well,
onto your insurance and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
okay. Alright, I'm kinda libertarian on this issue, I've been for a long time. Alright, when a man and a woman get together, or a man and a man get together, a woman and woman get together, or multiple people now, that's the new one, get together, that's a partnership. And you look on a business side, they
Multiple
create
people? Ooh.
they create yeah, keep stirring. They can create a partnership, an LLC, corporation, blah, blah, blah. You know,
Yeah,
it's all business related. But in a domestic partnership, it's basically the same thing. If you break up that partnership, oh, you'll find out how much of a partnership legally it is because
right.
the assets are then divided. Now, I think in terms of the way government looks at whatever relationship, they should stay the hell out of our relationships, period. And the only reason is historically you had some churches like the Mormon church back in the 1850s. That's when the federal government first got involved in marriage. And it became an issue after that. And now I agree with you. I don't think gay couples should be as worried about the word marriage, but be more worried about, hey, you can cohabit and have a relationship with whoever the heck you want. That's fine. But to force other religions to change their doctrine
Right.
for tax purposes or legal manipulation, and that's kind of why I think the LDS Church or the Catholic Church, at least in the United States, may eventually be pushed into a corner to accept those type of arrangements. I just don't feel personally that it's okay or it's right, and frankly, I would have some issues if the LDS Church. I might just even I don't know. I would have to cross that path when it happens, if it does happen, and to make my decision at that point. But it would be very troubling, and I know a lot of long-term LDS members would be very troubled if the church was forced into that position. On the other hand, though, here's the other thing, though, and you know,
Go
people need to love. If you're Christian, you've got to love these people, and you can't, other than that one term marriage. Why aren't we embracing them? Why aren't we encouraging them to come and participate and enjoy full membership to a certain point? I mean, the whole temple thing in the LDS church, you guys don't have that problem in the Catholic Church, right?
No, but I think you kind of answered your own question there, because and I think a lot of what's an issue with today's society is you have a person or a group of people who feel a certain way and want to force that belief onto you and expect you to change. And
Nice.
so to answer your question about that, I think that pretty much answers it, because yes, you could include homosexuals, but religion, Christian religion as a base
Mhm.
ha- is
Very clear.
anti-homosexual.
Yeah.
So it, you,
There's
I, I, I understand the people of feeling of wanting to be a part of something, but like you'd mentioned, and I agree with, I don't think it's right for somebody to force a group of people to change their beliefs just to satisfy my needs. That's not right. Um,
right, I
and in
agree.
today's atmosphere and society, you could start 100 billion different religions. I mean, a guy did it back in the 1820s, not too long ago. Over 100 something. Anyway, but
Well, even scientifically, if everyone was gay, the species couldn't procreate and
no,
expand and
absolutely not.
survive. This whole argument that some people make that, well, animals are gay. Like, no, no, they're not gay. And
Yeah,
if there is a gay horse, it's very rare because you provide the right circumstances for a male and female horse. You can have a baby horse. It's just reality.
and
Um,
I think we're kind of getting off track, because
I know we're getting off
our
track a little
our,
bit, but
our topic isn't
I knew
about
we were gonna
homosexuality
squirrel.
and stuff, but 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 at the
This,
same time, I think not just with sexual preference, but
yeah.
with other ideas and thoughts. Look, if I believe that uh, that Jesus was a uh, I don't know, pot smoking, mohawk wearing, uh, tattoo ridden person, it's not my place to force the Catholic Church to teach that to other people.
No, but to be a real Christian, to really love your fellow man. Remember the interview with Vinny, and he was talking about being on the other side, and his guide
Yeah,
was telling him basically you got to drop all prejudice, and the only real big commandment, or well, I guess there's two: love God and love your fellow man. If you truly love others, it's not based on exclusion in terms of their lifestyle. It's more
it really
based
was just
on,
treat people good. I mean,
yeah,
that's
just
really
treat
what
them.
it was about. Be
Yeah, just
nice.
I
Don't be a
mean,
dick.
I think as a member of a church, we shouldn't be looking for excuses to exclude people. We need to be looking for ways to include people.
Do you
Excluding and
think that's the
including are
reason why there's been a drastic drop
sure,
in organized religion? Because
sure.
I've looked at it as two ways. One, I think people at a certain age are tired of authority. Their whole
Hmm.
life they've been under authority. You begin to wake up and see that the government wasn't all apples and peaches, and that you've been lied to forever from them. So there's a sense of authority that you move away from. You may read something about your religion that didn't quite click or jive, and so there's another group or leadership that you disband from. And so does it get to a point then where people just feel like, look, I can read a Bible on my own. I can interpret it on my own, and how it feels to me. Or is it to a sense of, that's it. I'm going to throw everything out the door. I don't believe that there is an afterlife. I don't believe that there is a God, because I've been lied to my whole entire life. I need physical, absolute proof.
Mm.
And I don't see that anywhere I go. A sunset is not proof to me that God lives.
Well, yeah, I guess you could have. I think what changes, and we were talking originally, what changes between being a kid and being a 54-year-old man at this point. I think the way I look at life has changed. We talked a little bit about black and white thinking. There's a lot of gray that is in between the black and white. And the gray expands as you get older. You realize that there's so many reasons why people are the way they are, and most of them you don't even know or will even understand in your lifetime in terms of other people that you associate with or interact with on a daily basis. And really when it comes down to it, I'm a complicated person. I'm realizing that as I get older. I mean, the more I think I've had it, I thought I had it all figured out when I was younger, and I think that's where,
I think everybody does. When you're
yeah.
16, 17, 18 years old, you think you know
Oh,
everything.
it's the worst when you're 20, 25, 28. I mean,
Yeah.
you just think, I've been to college. I just got promoted. Man, I'm an expert. I've had 3 kids. What do my parents know? They're just old fuddy-duddies, and
Yeah.
they have
Then you
no
hit your
clue about
30s
what
and you're
life
like,
is
what
like.
the fuck did I just get into?
Then you're 40 and you start doing
Yeah.
some really dumbass things, and the next thing you know, you're like, "Boy, what the hell did I do? Why what is
Yeah.
true? What is?" And I think that's the journey I've been on, at least, and as I get older and older, I'm just thinking, I just want it to be simpler. I wish it would be more simple like it was when I was a kid, but I know it won't be, and I think you kinda start at a certain point deciding, "You know what? Is that really that important to be concerned about what this guy's doing or how they live their life?" Ah, you know?
Kind of pick your battles.
Yeah, it's more, it's really about how you look at life and what's
Right.
happening in your life. I think when we're younger, we're so obsessively focused on everything else around us that we don't really see the real genuine person we are. And that's why a lot of people get lost later in life. And I think, if you can figure that out earlier, I mean, I'm sure it'll give you an advantage. But I mean, I'm just happy where I'm at now. And I'm just realizing too that, this world is a lot bigger place and has a lot more to it than I used to think when I was a kid. And I think that's the way I look at religion too. I think there's a lot of different ways back to God. Is there maybe a few ways that might work a little better for certain people? Yes.
Right.
Um, and that's probably why I'm still LDS. I think that there's a lot of good things in the LDS church that I naturally, and the way I was raised and my culture that I grew up in Utah, that that make me feel good. And I'm a librarian now in my ward, and so perfect job for me. I don't have to teach or do anything crazy. I can just sit there in the library and give kids chalk and make copies and go to sacrament meeting, and I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Let me ask you a
So
question, and you
yeah,
don't have to answer it if you don't want to. I understand.
yeah, go ahead.
Can you be a Mormon and not believe that the Book of Mormon is true?
That's a tough one. That really is. Um, I mean, I did a lot of research, and there was one point where I felt like,
In any of that research, again, you don't have to answer this. Did you come
yeah,
to a conclusion that it was actually been written by a guy named Lehi and Nephi and all that stuff?
well, I think that I I mean, I know you went the other direction, but I've been completely to one side and back on this issue, and I still believe there's enough unknown in terms of that question that we don't know completely. Archaeology, I mean, I know Sean and I have had some debates or discussions about this, but the way people look at science changes. It changes. It's not static. And just because someone has a discovery this month, okay, that's how the Indians got to, or Native American to the Americas. Well, then we find out another study. Well, wait a minute, it could have happened 20,000 years before that. Well, wait a second. Maybe we didn't come from Sahara Africa in terms of the evolutionists. Maybe there was another beginning place for humankind. I mean, we're all over the board, man, in the last 250 years, 200 years in terms of science. So science is not static. It's not like all of a sudden someone has a research paper they submit, and then that's it. That's it's like the first, it's like a commandment of God. There's no other way to look at it. If that was the case, we wouldn't progress as a species. And so I think that in terms of that question about the Book of Mormon, yeah, there was one point where I seriously doubted it. At this point, I'm more optimistic, simply that I don't know for sure one way or the other. The only thing I can say is reading it, some of the principles in it, especially in Alma, I won't get too religious here, but very Christian and very conducive to pulling me out of the shithole I was in at that time. And I had a really good church leader who had me read the book, and especially this particular section. And to be honest, it really helped me. And so to say that I would just dismiss it, I mean, it's just kind of like dude, we could go into the question about the Bible, and I mean, you would maybe disagree with that, but I can say, why is a Roman emperor deciding what's in
I
the
know what
Bible?
things happen.
I mean, it's
I
400
brought
years
it up
after the
myself.
events.
I brought
Yeah.
it up myself.
So how do we know the Bible's
Yeah.
correct?
I mean, the Book of Jesus claimly. Oh wait, no, there is no Book of Jesus, is there?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
how do we know some of the Gnostic books weren't actually true?
But here's the thing, though, is that we know that the people that they speak about
they
are
existed.
true. They exist.
True.
Okay.
True.
We have. I'm not going to.
We
get
don't
into
have any
that
physical
because
evidence, right?
because
I agree.
you gave me that Gavin Newsom answer right there.
Yeah, I know. Word salad. It was great.
And not to put you on the spot, I did. Like I said, I was okay. Did not want to answer that. I completely understand. But you are correct when you do say that there are valuable life learning
Nuggets,
stories inside of the Book of Mormon. In my personal opinion, I don't think one iota is factual that there were those people in there at all, because there's been absolutely zero substantial, especially the book. Is the Book of Abraham even taught anymore?
Oh, well, that's a different one. So
why is that one different? Think some people disprove that when they had a big open house about, hey, we're going to get the news that everything is true on.
Look, I dissected this thing pretty hardcore when I did go off on my little adventure. I don't know what they call it, walkabout. And look, there's everyone has a shelf, and there's certain questions that they don't either want to answer or want to answer now, or maybe not even want to have an answer in the future until they're dead, that they put up on that shelf. Now I have a few of those now, and I occasionally look at them and think, should I bring this down off the shelf? Or I hear you talk about one of them, and I'm like, yeah, I've done a lot of research on that particular item, and you know what? Honestly, it doesn't really do a whole lot for me, one way or the other. So I am not an Orthodox Mormon at all. I very far from it. And I mean,
well,
like
but what you say about the Bible is 100% true, and a lot of people don't realize, like, the Bible was not put together when Jesus was alive.
No,
it had been put together in the Old Testament as a group of Jewish books, Jewish scripture, which was the Old Testament.
Well, there's an argument if Jesus even existed.
Oh, there's plenty of arguments about that. There's plenty of arguments of that. But the actual New Testament itself in the Bible that most of us know today wasn't put together until over 300 years after the Council of Nicaea, which took place, and everybody, all the church leaders were thrown into a room, door locked. Constantine said, y'all figure this shit out or else your heads are coming off. And they came together with, what book is going here, what book is going there. And a lot of books were gone and were vanished. And it wasn't until the Dead Sea Scrolls came about that we began to see other books that had been written, that had been hidden from us for years. And one of the things in my crazy form of thinking, but because I think really, really deeply, I
know that surprises the audience, but he does.
Shocking.
He does. Yeah,
but a sentiment that I feel that.
Well, hold on. Sometimes I'm editing these podcasts and I'm like, holy crap. that came out of Brent's mouth. That was pretty good.
Well, one thing that in reading some of the other books that are not included in today's Bible, one of the things that I started to contemplate, which is not at all a popular opinion, but was Judas actually the most faithful disciple? And the reason why I say that, and I think you and I have maybe talked about this before in the past, but the whole plan of the Son of God is that he had to die in order
Mm-hmm.
for the gates of heaven to be open, correct?
Correct. Well, okay. I'll throw in something. This is good.
Hold on.
Okay, I'll throw in something here.
Okay. All right.
What if Judas and Jesus were in on what was going to go on, how it was
That,
going to go down?
that's
And
what I'm getting to,
Matthew,
because
Matthew, Luke, and John had no idea. They
right,
weren't
because
told.
but they may have had an idea, but as a disciple, okay, if you are a disciple of somebody, you will risk, and we saw Peter, we saw they would risk their lives for Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if you have believers like that, in order for the plan to go through, you have to have somebody who fully understands what must take place. And to me, Judas made the ultimate sacrifice to be cast out in the names of everybody as the most evil person who sold out on Jesus for a bag of gold.
Yeah, but
But
there's one problem with this.
but if
There's
he
one problem.
didn't, it would not have happened.
But there's one problem with the story, at least the story that was written. So we don't know for sure this happened because none of this
Right.
is verifiable.
Mhm.
Did he actually discontinue himself? Because we can't use the other word on YouTube or Spotify, but did he discontinue himself after he betrayed Christ? And um, if what you're saying is correct, that they both knew what was needed to be done, I don't think Judas would have had the guilt to
I don't know.
discontinue himself like
I
that.
don't know. Look, if I had to sell my mom out
Mm-hmm.
so that she died, and I watched all of that, and I seen it happen and watched what
True.
happened to her, I will tell you that the feelings of that would be extremely strong inside of my head.
Well, there's another theory too.
And then
Maybe.
there's also the guilt of, I hope that was correct. What did I just do? I just did this, and everybody casting down. You have now, everybody's disassociated themselves from you
Well, maybe
because
the
you
original
understood,
plan.
you were the one that understood that this had to happen.
Well, maybe the original plan was this was going to happen a certain way. Judas changed it up because he was given the silver. Greed can do a lot of weird, crazy things to people. And that's where the guilt came in because he realized I did it for money, as well as he was probably justifying in his mind this is still supposed to happen. However, I did it for cash. And
And we don't know if he did.
we
I
don't
mean,
know.
it doesn't, and they tossed him a bag of coins make for a great story. I mean,
Yeah, it's a good story. And you could,
yeah.
you can talk to
But
some
if you've ever had
scriptologists.
a chance to read the Book of Judas, I mean, it's very in depth.
Yeah.
It's a very loving book, and that's where I really began to like. It's just a thought, is all it is.
Well,
I'm not saying it's truth or anything like that, but it's something that kind of runs through my head that those two understood exactly what had to happen, and Jesus was like, "Look, you got to make this happen. You have to do this."
mhm. Well, let me ask you a question. Let's just say that Christianity really didn't exist. Didn't all this stuff didn't never happen. Let's pretend. Would humankind be where it's at? Would mankind be where it's at
Or
without
maybe
religion?
more peaceful.
Would it? No,
How many
we
wars have been
could
fought
be.
over
Well,
Christianity?
how many? Well, how many animals have achieved the same level genetically and evolutionary wise as we have? Um, I mean, our species could have wiped itself out quite easily many times over the last thousands of years. Um, is religion something that had to exist from the very start?
It's a good question because I think the ultimate perception of man is that we work in groups, that we
Mhm.
follow, some lead, but there's, you have families, and then you have cities, and then you have, you know, states, and then you have countries, and then you have continents, and blah blah blah, and all that stuff. Um, we seen in the instance of COVID where people were willing to give up everything to adhere to what I am being told. Now
Mhm.
you're always going to have those free thinkers that are like, I'm not too sure about that. But the overall majority of people will comply when told. That is just a fact. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. And I don't think anybody thinks of themselves that way.
Mhm.
Um, but when I'm
Yeah,
still
you got
walking,
it almost got a religious it was almost those who believed in
yes,
masks and
absolutely.
vaccines. It was almost a religion.
And I even today I'll still see somebody wearing a mask while they're driving a car, and I'm like, there's a guy right there that's afraid not
Yeah,
to just go off on his own. He's
that's a
being told
bishop of the
he's
COVID
probably got
church.
his 19 vaccines and is, doing exactly what he's told. But at the same time, if you ask him, you always do what you're told. He's going to say, no, I'm a free thinker. I do whatever I want.
Progressive.
Okay. Yeah. So,
And you shouldn't have the right to say anything about what I believe because I'm progressive.
so to, so to answer your question, I don't think it was a necessity. However, I think it was something that men looked at as a way of controlling the herd into their likeness of flowing to what needs
Well,
to be done.
the reason I asked this question is this. I read an interesting book when I was on my sabbatical from LDS Church. It was called The Journey of Souls. And basically, it was this hypnotherapist who, and I don't know if this stuff is true or not. I mean, you can go look it up on the internet. It's called The Journey of Souls, and he wrote a second book. And basically, the point was that the soul in the human body, the soul is a symbiotic. In other words, it's like a virus. That's kind of a crappy way to say it, but the soul inhabits the body and animates the body. And once you die, your soul moves on and then sometimes comes back. So reincarnation is part of this whole book, and we can argue if it's hokey or if it's true or not. But it brings up a good question because when we were talking to again with Vinny, one of the things that he brought up, and it's interesting if you read his book too, when he first gets there, when he's talking to his guide, he says, "Oh yeah, I'm Christian. I grew up, he's LDS and he doesn't describe it that way in the book, but we know where it's going." He's like, "Yeah, I belong to this church and we know, it's true." And the guide laughs at him and kind of says, "Well, okay. I mean, it's good that you have a religion and that you have something you believe in," which
Mhm.
with that kind of an answer, that tells me that all you people who belong to a certain religion or belief pattern think you got it all figured out. Do you? I mean, what's the real important things that we need to be doing? And I think he outlined that and basically said, we need to drop our prejudices and we need to love others. That's hard. It's not as
Yeah.
easy as you think.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think in terms of the way man looks at religion or God is like an ant looking at a human being and saying, golly, w- explain that. We
Mm.
can't. Therefore, we create these mythologies and religions to explain that. So is the next life, as far as that kind of belief? Is that more hokey pokey religion or is that just science in a sense?
Yeah.
I
It's a
don't
good
know.
thought.
Yeah.
You mentioned the what was it, the psychohypnotist?
Yeah, hypnotherapist, yeah.
hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
I had an experience with a hypnotherapist once on a show. Watched him, and like he had
Oh,
like
yeah, I did too.
4 people up there, and like he would say, act like you're a monkey, and the guys would act like they were monkeys, and then he'd snap his fingers, and they would,
Was it at
be
the
asleep
Paris
again, and
casino?
then he would be like, when I snap my finger, when I count to 3, you're gonna, be ducks, and then he'd go 1, 2, 3, and then everybody be quacking around and chirping around and all that, and then he'd snap his fingers, and they'd all
Mm.
stop, and then, but one of them really, really, I
Did
don't
you
know, this
do
one
it?
really got to this.
Were you
No,
one of the
no,
subjects?
I didn't
I
do it,
was.
but what
Yeah.
happened was he said, when I count to 3, you'll do exactly what I say. And he went 1, 2, 3, and then he dropped the mic on his foot and went, "Fuck me!" And then I will never get that scene out of my head of what happened next.
Oh. Yeah, that's a terrible joke. I was at the Paris casino with Charlene. We were married, and we went to the hypnotist show,
Uh,
and I was very skeptical. I was like, "Yeah, this is all BS." And so they wanted volunteers, and so Charlene was pushing me, "Go up, go up, go up." I'm like, "No, this is all BS." She's like, "Go up." So I did,
really?
and it's a trippy experience. I mean, you don't lose consciousness. You don't stop believing. I mean, everything seems real, except when he gives you a suggestion once you're hypnotized,
Mhm.
you don't have any social pressure telling you not to do it. You almost want to do it. You almost want to do what he's asking you to do. It's trippy.
Wow.
And yeah, and he asked me to do a couple things I would never do. One of them was, well, you, not that I would never do it. And that's what he explained at the beginning. He says, I'm not going to
I don't
ask you
think
to
I
do
could be
something.
hypnotized.
Well, you'd probably get hypnotized because I believe the same thing.
Mm.
It's usually the smartest people that are the biggest idiots when it comes to being hypnotized. But one of the things he did is had me sing I think it was Coming to America on someone's lap, another female's lap. I had to sit
Uh-huh.
on her knee and sing to her and like, try to romantically induce her, like I was. I did it. I mean, in front
Really?
of this whole crowd. And they have it on video somewhere. I think
Yeah.
it's somewhere. I've got to find it, but yeah, it was crazy, man. I when I got up on stage at first, I was like, there's no way this guy is going to hypnotize me. No way at all." Sure enough,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
One of the
So
sheep, buddy.
I guess I am. I'm easy to manipulate.
I actually, in a
Anyway,
private session, went through hypnotherapy, and they could hypnotize me.
really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I guess you're a little hard-headed.
I'm
That
stubborn.
explains
I
you.
refuse
Very
to release
stubborn.
my will. It's
Anyway, hey, we had a good night
engaged.
tonight.
Yeah.
I think, to sum it up that, I think as we get older, um, I think life becomes a lot more gray, not just our hair, color. I think that's a good thing. Um, I'm happy I'm not a rigid thinker anymore. I don't know though. I look at my dad though, and this is where I'm a little worried. And hopefully he doesn't listen to this, but my dad and my mom, as they get in their 70s and 80s, scientifically, your brain does get less elastic. It becomes more rigid, and
Right.
so are their beliefs. I mean, I can't say it, but I've had so many arguments with him about Trump, in the last year, and it's just scary how rigid his thinking is now. And I'm hoping that, I do see, and you're probably right. As we were kids, we tend to be a little more religious. As they get older, you tend to become a little more religious. I mean, they go to the
Yeah.
temple
I think
every
it's like a
week,
full circle,
full circle.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
beginning
So
and end.
anyway, it was a great night.
Yeah.
Fun discussion. So,
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.